Why did no one see her coming? The pickup truck rolled through the NATO training camp gates with the kind of slowness that made people look twice. Not because it was impressive, but because it wasn't. The paint was chipped down to bare metal in places. The tires were caked thick with mud from some forgotten back road. And behind the wheel sat a woman who looked like she'd taken a wrong turn on her way to a weekend yard sale. Olivia Mitchell didn't step out of that truck like someone arriving at one of the most elite military training facilities in the world. She climbed out like she was dropping off groceries. Faded t-shirt, worn backpack held together by a single stubborn strap. Hair tied low, plain brown, nothing special. Boots scuffed so badly they looked like they'd walked through a decade of bad decisions. The recruits saw her, and they laughed. Not out loud at first, just glances, whispers behind hands, a shared look that said everything without saying anything at all. She didn't belong here. Anyone could see that. This was a place for soldiers, for warriors, for people who'd earned the right to wear the uniform. Not logistics workers who'd wandered off course. But here's what they didn't know, couldn't know. What no one in that entire camp could have possibly understood as Olivia Mitchell pulled her backpack from the passenger seat and walked toward the training yard. The woman they were dismissing, the one they'd already written off before she'd spoken a single word, came from wealth most of them couldn't imagine. Private tutors, gated estates, a family name that opened doors across 3 continents. She'd left all of it behind, not because she had to, because she wanted to. The training yard was chaos, controlled chaos but chaos all the same, recruits running drills, instructors barking orders, the sound of boots hitting dirt, bodies hitting the ground, breath coming hard and fast under the merciless sun. And through it all walked Captain Harrow, 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle and authority, a voice that could stop a riot or start one depending on his mood. His eyes locked on Olivia the moment she entered the yard. The word cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone stopped, turned, waited. Olivia stood there, hands in her pockets, face calm like she'd been expecting this. "What's your deal?" Harrow moved closer, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust with each step. "Supply crew get lost." The group snickered. A girl with a sharp blonde ponytail, Tara, leaned toward the cadet next to her. Her voice was just loud enough to carry. "Bet she's here to check a box. Gender quota, right?" More laughter, louder this time. Olivia didn't blink, didn't shift her weight, didn't do any of the small, nervous things people do when they're being sized up by someone who could end their career with a single phone call. She looked at Harrow, met his eyes, and said, "I'm a cadet, sir." For a moment, just a moment, something flickered across Harrow's face. Surprise maybe, or confusion, but it was gone before anyone could name it. He snorted, waved her off like swatting a fly. "Get in line then, don't slow us down." And just like that, Olivia Mitchell became invisible, not because she wanted to be, but because that's how they chose to see her, or rather not see her. The mess hall that first evening was its own kind of battlefield. Long tables filled with recruits who'd been training together for weeks, voices loud, egos louder, everyone trying to prove they belonged, trying to establish their place in the hierarchy that forms in groups like this. The strong, the funny, the connected, the ones who'd make it, and the ones who wouldn't. Olivia carried her tray to a corner table, away from the noise, away from the performance. She sat down, picked up her fork, and started eating. That's when Derek noticed her. Derek was lean, cocky, buzzcut so fresh you could still see the barber's lines. He was the kind of guy who'd never had to fight for respect because people gave it to him automatically. Good-looking, confident, the type who thought silence meant weakness. He grabbed his tray, strutted over to Olivia's table, dropped it down with a clatter that made nearby tables turn and look. "Yo, lost girl," his voice carried across the mess hall. "This ain't a soup kitchen. You sure you're not here to wash dishes?" The group behind him erupted, laughter that felt designed to cut, to wound, to remind everyone who mattered and who didn't. Olivia paused, fork halfway to her mouth. She looked at Derek, really looked at him, and said, "I'm eating." Her voice was steady, not defensive, not angry, just stating a fact. Derek leaned in, smirking now, playing to his audience. "Yeah, well, eat faster. You're taking up space real soldiers need." Then he did it, flicked her tray, just enough, just hard enough to send a spoonful of mashed potatoes splattering across her shirt. The room howled. And Olivia, she wiped the mess with a napkin, slowly, her hands steady, her eyes never leaving her plate. Then she took another bite, like Derek wasn't even there, like his existence meant nothing, like the laughter washing over her was just background noise. That should have been the end of it, a moment of cruelty in a place designed to break people down before building them back up. But something about Olivia's silence, her stillness, it bothered them, made them push harder, made them want to see her break. Because silence can be two things. It can be weakness, or it can be strength so complete it doesn't need to announce itself. They chose to believe it was weakness. The warm-ups the next morning were designed to separate the serious from the pretenders. Push-ups until your arms shook. Sprints that burned your lungs. Burpees in the dirt under a sun that showed no mercy. Most recruits struggled through, their faces red, their breathing ragged, their bodies screaming for rest. Olivia kept pace, her breathing steady, her movements controlled, but her shoelaces kept slipping loose. Old laces, frayed, barely holding her boots together. Lance jogged up beside her during a sprint. Lance was the group's golden boy, broad shoulders, a grin that said he'd never lost at anything, the kind of guy who made everything look easy because for him it was. "Yo, thrift store." His voice rang out clear, mocking, making sure everyone heard. "Your shoes giving up, or is that just you?" The laughter rippled through the group like a wave, predictable, automatic. Olivia didn't respond. She knelt down, retied her laces with quick, precise fingers, started to stand. That's when Lance bumped her, hard, shoulder to shoulder, not an accident. Olivia stumbled, her hands hit the mud, her knees sank into the wet earth. The ground was cold, unforgiving. The group howled. "What's that, Mitchell?" Lance called out, playing to the crowd. "You signing up to clean the floors or just be our punching bag?" Olivia got up, wiped her palms on her pants, and ran on, not a word, not a glance back, just forward motion, one foot in front of the other. The laughter followed her all morning. But here's the thing about people who underestimate you. They stop paying attention. They get comfortable. They assume the story they've written in their heads is the only story there is. During the break, Olivia sat on a wooden bench, pulled a granola bar from her bag. She was alone again, always alone, not by choice really, just by circumstance. When you're invisible, people don't think to sit beside you. Tara approached, arms crossed, that sharp blonde ponytail swinging. Two other cadets flanked her like backup singers in a show nobody asked for. "Olivia, right?" Tara's voice dripped with fake concern, syrupy, insincere. "So like, where are you even from? Did you win a contest to be here?" Her friends giggled. One covered her mouth like it was all too funny. Olivia took a bite of her granola bar, chewed slowly, looked up. "I applied." Her voice was flat, like she was stating the weather, like the question was so absurd it didn't deserve emotion. Tara's smile tightened. "Okay, but why?" She leaned in, invaded Olivia's space. "You don't exactly scream elite soldier. I mean, look at your everything." She waved a hand at Olivia. The muddy t-shirt, the plain brown hair, the complete absence of anything that would make someone look twice. Olivia set her granola bar down, leaned forward, just enough to make Tara flinch, and said, "I'm here to train, not to make you feel better about yourself." Tara froze, her cheeks went red. "Whatever," she muttered, turning away. "Weirdo." But as Tara walked away, something shifted, barely noticeable. Just a small crack in the performance everyone was putting on. because Olivia hadn't defended herself, hadn't explained, hadn't done any of the things people do when they're trying to justify their existence. She'd simply stated her truth and moved on. That afternoon brought the navigation drill, a test that separated the trained from the lucky. Cadets had to cross a forested ridge using only a map and compass. Time limit, 2 hours. No shortcuts, no help. Olivia moved alone through the trees, her compass steady, her steps quiet against the pine needles. She wasn't rushing, wasn't panicking, just moving with purpose through terrain that had already claimed 3 recruits who'd had to be radioed back to base. A group of 4 cadets led by a wiry guy named Kyle spotted her checking her map under a tree. Kyle had been vying for Lance's spotlight, trying to prove he was just as tough, just as funny, just as worth noticing. "Hey, Dora the Explorer," his voice cut through the quiet of the forest. "You lost already, or you just out here picking flowers?" His group laughed, circled closer, pack mentality, safety in numbers. Olivia folded her map, her fingers deliberate, precise, and kept walking. Kyle jogged up, snatched the map from her hands before she could react. "Let's see how you do without this." He tore it in half, then again, tossed the pieces into the wind like confetti. The others cheered. Olivia stopped. Her eyes followed the scraps as they fluttered away, spinning, dancing on the breeze, gone. She looked at Kyle, her face blank, and said, "Hope you know your way back." Then she turned and kept moving, her pace unchanged, like the map had never mattered, like she'd memorized the route before she'd even entered the forest. Kyle's laughter faltered, but his group kept jeering, their voices echoing through the trees long after Olivia had disappeared from view. What they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that Olivia had already completed 2 tours in terrain that made this forest look like a nature walk. She'd navigated through mountains without maps, through deserts without compasses, through situations where one wrong turn meant you didn't come home. The map was just for show, just to follow protocol. She didn't need it. What happens when the quiet one stops being quiet? The rifle disassembly drill came that afternoon. 2 minutes. That's all they had. Take apart an M4 carbine, clean it, reassemble it. Simple in theory, brutal in practice, especially when your hands are shaking from exhaustion and your mind is clouded from 12 straight hours of drills designed to break you down. Most of the cadets struggled, their fingers fumbling with pins that suddenly felt too small, swearing as parts slipped, panic creeping in as the seconds ticked away. Lance finished in 1 minute 43 seconds. Messy, parts barely snapped into place, but he grinned like he'd aced a final exam, held his rifle up, waited for applause that never came. Tara scraped by at 1:59, her hands shaking as she forced the last piece into position, relief flooding her face when the instructor nodded. Then Olivia stepped up. She didn't rush, didn't hesitate. Her hands moved like they were following a script written in muscle memory, pin out, bolt free, parts laid out in a perfect grid on the table in front of her, each piece exactly where it needed to be, no wasted motion, no second guessing. 52 seconds. Not a single mistake. Sergeant Polk, the weapons instructor, stared at the timer, then at her, then back at the timer like it might have made a mistake. "Mitchell," his voice was low, careful, "where'd you learn to do that?" Olivia wiped her hands on her pants, stepped back. "Practice," she said, her eyes on the ground, not humble, not proud, just factual. The training screen behind them played a slow-motion replay. Every move clean, precise. No wasted motion, no hesitation like watching a surgeon or a machine. A lieutenant nearby leaned toward Polk, whispered something. Polk's expression changed, tightened. He looked at Olivia differently now. "Her hands didn't shake," the lieutenant murmured. "That's Special Forces steady." Lance overheard, scoffed, loud enough for Olivia to hear. "So she can clean a gun, doesn't mean she can fight." But something shifted in that moment. Small, almost imperceptible. A few cadets started watching Olivia differently, not with respect exactly, more like curiosity, like they'd seen a magic trick and couldn't figure out how it worked. During the break, a quiet cadet named Alina approached Olivia. Alina had been watching for days, noticing things, seeing patterns the others missed. She slipped a spare map from her own kit into Olivia's hand. "You'll need this," Alina whispered, her eyes darting to make sure no one saw. Olivia took it, nodded once, tucked it into her bag without a word. That's when the whispers started. Quiet at first. A few cadets glancing at Olivia during breaks, trying to piece together the puzzle that didn't fit the story they'd been telling themselves. Who was she really? Where had she trained? Why was someone who could field strip a weapon faster than their weapons instructor pretending to be a rookie? The questions hung in the air like smoke, visible but untouchable. The hand-to-hand combat drill came 2 days later. Grappling, submissions, realistic combat scenarios, the kind of training that revealed who'd actually been in a fight and who just watched movies. Cadets were paired randomly. Olivia ended up facing Kyle, the same Kyle who'd torn her map. He smirked when he saw the pairing, cracked his knuckles, made a show of stretching. "Try not to cry when I'm done with you," he said loud enough for his friends to hear. The instructor blew the whistle. Kyle lunged, fast, aggressive, all his weight behind a tackle meant to drive Olivia into the mat hard enough to knock the wind out of her. But Olivia wasn't there anymore. She'd moved, shifted just enough. Kyle's momentum carried him past her, off balance, vulnerable. Olivia's hand shot out, not a punch, a control. She caught his wrist mid-motion, twisted, used his own forward momentum against him. Kyle's body followed the physics of his own attack, spun, crashed into the mat face first. Before he could react, Olivia had his arm locked. A textbook submission hold. Clean, efficient. The kind of move that takes years to perfect because it requires reading your opponent's body language before they even know what they're going to do. Kyle tapped once, twice, desperate. Olivia released him immediately, stood, offered a hand to help him up. Kyle slapped it away, got up on his own, his face red, not from exertion, from humiliation. The instructor nodded slowly. "Clean work, Mitchell." The group had gone quiet. That kind of quiet that feels heavy, oppressive. The quiet that comes when everyone's assumptions shatter at once. Tara stood at the edge of the mat, her arms crossed, her face pale. She'd been so sure, so confident in her judgment. But now there were cracks forming, small ones, but cracks all the same. That evening in the barracks, the atmosphere changed. Not dramatically, just subtly. The way water changes when it's about to freeze, still liquid, still flowing, but different, colder. Derek sat on his bunk, cleaning his rifle for the third time that day. Obsessive, his hands moving automatically while his mind worked through something he couldn't quite name. He'd flicked Olivia's tray, made her wear mashed potatoes on her shirt. The whole mess hall had laughed. It had felt good in that moment, powerful, like he'd put someone in their place. But now it felt different, watching her move through drills like water flowing downhill, inevitable, effortless. It made him wonder what else he'd misjudged. Lance wasn't there. He'd taken to eating alone, training alone. The golden boy who'd never lost at anything had suddenly discovered what losing felt like, not in competition, in perception. The way people looked at him had changed, like they were reevaluating everything they'd assumed about him. Tara sat on her bunk, scrolling through her phone, looking at pictures from before camp. When life made sense, when she knew who she was and who everyone else was, the world had been sorted into neat categories: leaders and followers, strong and weak, people who mattered and people who didn't. Olivia Mitchell had blown those categories apart without saying a word. The next morning brought the obstacle course. 20 stations, each one designed to test a different aspect of physical and mental toughness: rope climbs, wall scaling, crawling through mud under barbed wire, balance beams over water, tire runs. Most cadets approached it like a race: sprint through, attack each obstacle with aggression and force, get it done. Olivia approached it like a conversation. She read each obstacle, understood what it was asking, responded precisely. No wasted energy, no unnecessary movement. At the rope climb, while others muscled their way up using pure arm strength, burning out halfway, Olivia used her legs, technique over power. She moved up the rope like smoke rising, smooth, inevitable. At the wall, while others jumped and grabbed and scrambled, Olivia found the rhythm, the exact points where momentum and leverage intersected. She was over the top before Lance had made his second attempt. The mud crawl under barbed wire was where it all came together, or fell apart, depending on who you were. This was the station that separated the train from the lucky. Low ceiling, actual mud, not dirt, mud, cold, thick. The kind that gets in your mouth, your nose, your eyes, and barbed wire just inches above your back. One wrong move, one moment of panic, and you tear yourself open. Derek went first, confident, aggressive, trying to power through. He made it 15 feet before the wire caught his shirt, tore a line down his back. He had to crawl backwards, shame burning hotter than the scratch. Lance went next, slower, more careful, but halfway through he panicked, tried to rise too quickly. The wire caught him, drew blood. He finished, but not well. Tara refused to try, stood at the entrance, staring, her face pale. She shook her head, walked away. The first time she'd openly backed down from anything. Then Olivia entered the crawl. She moved like liquid, like she'd done this 1,000 times, her body flat against the mud, her elbows pulling her forward in smooth, controlled movements, reading the barbed wire above her like a language, anticipating where it dipped, where it rose, adjusting her path without thinking. She emerged on the other side in record time. Not a scratch, not a tear, just mud. Sergeant Polk was there, watching. He'd been watching Olivia closely since the rifle drill. Now he pulled out his phone, made a call, walked away from the group, his voice too low to hear. Something was happening, behind the scenes, invisible to most of the camp. Questions were being asked, files were being pulled. People were starting to wonder who Olivia Mitchell really was. Because the truth about secrets is this: they don't stay buried forever. Eventually, something shifts. Someone asks the right question, or makes the right observation, and the whole carefully constructed facade starts to crack. That crack came during a routine morning formation. Captain Harrow was running through standard announcements, upcoming drills, safety protocols, logistics, the kind of boring administrative stuff that every military training program requires. A colonel approached, not their colonel, someone else, older, distinguished, wearing ribbons that spoke of decades of service in places most people couldn't find on a map. He stopped when he saw Olivia standing in formation. His eyes went wide, then his hand moved, slowly, deliberately, up to his temple. A salute. Perfect, formal, the kind of salute you give to someone of significant rank, or someone who's earned respect that transcends rank. The entire camp froze. Harrow's mouth hung open, mid-sentence, mid-word, the announcements forgotten. The colonel held the salute until Olivia nodded, just once, a small acknowledgement. Then he lowered his hand, turned, walked away without explaining, without answering the 1,000 questions hanging in the air. Harrow found his voice. "Mitchell, my office now." The camp watched Olivia follow Harrow across the yard, every eye tracking their movement, whispers starting before they'd even disappeared inside the administrative building. What the cadets couldn't see, couldn't know, was what happened in that office. Harrow behind his desk, Olivia standing at ease in front of it, the colonel who'd saluted joining them, closing the door. "Who the hell are you?" Harrow's voice was quiet, controlled, but there was an edge to it, the edge of a man realizing he'd made a significant miscalculation. Olivia looked at him, that same calm expression she'd worn since day one. "A cadet, sir." The colonel leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. "Captain Harrow, I served with Mitchell's unit in classified operations I can't discuss. What I can tell you is this. The woman standing in front of you has done things most soldiers won't do in 3 lifetimes." Harrow sat down, slowly, like his legs had suddenly stopped working properly. "Why is she here?" he asked, not to Olivia, to the colonel. The colonel shrugged. "That's between her and command, but I'd suggest treating her with the respect her service has earned." He left, the door closing softly behind him. Harrow and Olivia stood in silence, the kind of silence that rewrites history, that makes you reconsider every interaction, every assumption, every moment where you thought you knew what was happening. "The others," Harrow said finally, "they've been—" "I know," Olivia interrupted, "it's fine." "It's not fine." Olivia met his eyes. "It will be." She turned, walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. "Permission to return to training, sir." Harrow nodded, couldn't quite find words. Olivia left, the door closing behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Outside, the camp waited, every cadet trying to look like they weren't watching, trying to look like they were focused on their own drills, but every eye tracked Olivia as she walked back to formation. Tara watched from the medical tent. She'd gone there to avoid the mud crawl, told them her ankle hurt, a lie, but a convenient one. Now she stood in the doorway, watching Olivia walk across the yard, and something inside her chest felt tight, uncomfortable, the beginning of shame, real shame, not embarrassment, not regret. The deep, bone-level shame that comes from realizing you've judged someone completely wrong and treated them terribly based on that judgment. Derek saw it too, saw the colonel's salute, saw Harrow's expression when Olivia left his office, saw the way the camp's energy had shifted in the space of 10 minutes. He thought about mashed potatoes splattered across her shirt, about his voice ringing out across the mess hall, about how good it had felt to get that laugh from the crowd. It didn't feel good anymore. Lance was in the barracks. He'd seen it all through the window. Part of him wanted to deny it, to find some explanation that let him keep the story he'd been telling himself. But he couldn't. The evidence was too clear, too undeniable. The woman he'd bumped into the mud wasn't weak, wasn't incompetent, wasn't any of the things he'd assumed. She was someone he should have respected from day one, and he'd failed, completely, publicly, irrevocably. When does silence become its own form of power? The combat drill that afternoon felt different, heavier, like the air itself had changed composition. The cadets moved through their formations with less confidence, less certainty. Every glance toward Olivia carried weight now, questions without words, assumptions being reconsidered in real time. Instructor Reeves ran the drill, close quarters combat, real scenarios, split-second decisions that could mean life or death in actual deployment. He set up the scene, hostile building, unknown number of targets, civilian presence possible, rules of engagement strict. Teams of 4. Olivia ended up with Derek, Kyle, and a quiet cadet named Marcus who'd mostly stayed out of the social dynamics of the camp. Derek cleared his throat as they geared up. "So, Mitchell." He didn't look at her, focused on his vest straps. "You want to take point or—" "Derek takes point," Olivia said, simple, factual. Derek blinked. He'd expected her to assert dominance, to put him in his place after how he'd treated her. That's what he would have done if their positions were reversed. But Olivia just checked her rifle, waited. The drill began. Derek led them into the mock building, a maze of rooms and corridors, cardboard cutouts for targets, some hostile, some civilian. Technology tracked their accuracy, their decision-making, their timing. Derek moved carefully, too carefully, second-guessing everything. His confidence shattered. Kyle followed, equally uncertain. Marcus held steady, professional. Olivia moved like water, reading the space, the angles, the shadows. When a hostile target popped up behind them, she had it neutralized before Derek even registered the threat. When they turned a corner into an ambush scenario, she'd already positioned herself to cover their blind spot. She didn't take over, didn't push Derek aside or bark orders. She just moved through the space like she could see 3 seconds into the future, anticipating, adjusting, protecting. They finished with perfect scores, all targets eliminated, 0 civilian casualties, record time. Reeves pulled them aside after, looked at Derek. That was solid leadership, cadet. Derek started to nod, accept the praise, then stopped. Actually, sir, it was Mitchell. He paused, trying to find words for something he didn't fully understand. She was covering everything I missed. Reeves looked at Olivia. She said nothing, just stood there with that same calm expression. Teamwork, Reeves said finally. That's what it's about. But everyone knew. It hadn't been teamwork. It had been Olivia making sure they succeeded despite themselves. That night in the mess hall, the usual noise was muted, conversations quieter, less performative. Derek carried his tray to his usual table, stopped, looked at Olivia sitting alone in her corner. He changed direction, walked to her table, set his tray down across from her. Mind if I sit? Olivia looked up. It's a free country. Derek sat, ate in silence for a minute. Then, I'm sorry for the potatoes and the comments, and he gestured vaguely. Everything. Olivia continued eating. Okay. I was an asshole. Yes. Derek almost smiled. Not going to make this easy, are you? Should I? He shook his head. No, I guess not. He paused. Why didn't you defend yourself all this time? You could have shut us all down, made us look like idiots. Olivia set down her fork. Would you have listened? The question hung there, heavy, honest. Derek thought about it, really thought about it. Probably not, he admitted. Then what would have been the point? She picked up her fork, continued eating. The conversation was over, but something had shifted, a small crack in the wall between them. The next day brought survival training. Cadets were dropped in pairs in the forest with minimal supplies. 24 hours, navigate back to base, demonstrate field craft, fire building, shelter construction, water procurement, the skills that separate someone who survives from someone who just waits to be rescued. Olivia was paired with Tara. Tara's face went pale when the pairing was announced. She'd avoided Olivia since the colonel's salute, hadn't spoken to her, hadn't looked at her. Shame had kept her at a distance. Now there was no distance, just 24 hours, alone in the woods. They were dropped at different coordinates, had to find each other first, then work together to get back. Tara found the rally point quickly. Her navigation skills were actually solid. She sat on a fallen log, waiting, dreading. Olivia arrived 30 minutes later, materialized out of the forest so quietly Tara jumped. Jesus, Tara breathed, announce yourself or something. Olivia dropped her pack, pulled out her map. We should head northeast, follow the ridgeline. There's a stream that'll lead us back. Tara nodded. They started walking. The silence between them was suffocating. After an hour, Tara couldn't take it anymore. Look, I know I was awful to you. I said things, did things I thought. She stopped, started again. I thought I knew who you were, what you were, and I was completely wrong. Olivia kept walking, didn't respond. Can you say something? Tara's voice cracked. Yell at me, tell me what a terrible person I am, something. Olivia stopped, turned, looked at Tara, really looked at her. What do you want me to say? I don't know, that you forgive me, that we're okay. We're not okay, Olivia said, simple, factual. You judged me without knowing me, made assumptions based on how I looked, how I dressed. and you used those assumptions to justify treating me like I was less than human." Tara's eyes filled with tears. "I know." "No," Olivia said quietly. "I don't think you do. Because if you really understood what you did, you wouldn't be asking me to forgive you. You'd be figuring out how to never do it again." She turned, kept walking. Tara stood there, the words hitting her like physical blows, because Olivia was right. She'd wanted absolution, wanted to feel better, wanted to turn this into a moment of growth and reconciliation. But she hadn't earned that, not yet. They made camp as the sun set. Olivia built the fire, efficient, practiced, using materials from the forest in ways that showed years of field experience. Tara watched, helped where she could, mostly stayed quiet. As darkness fell, Tara spoke again. "How do you do it?" "Do what?" "Stay calm. When everyone's treating you like garbage, when everyone's against you, how do you not just break?" Olivia stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in her eyes. "I've been in situations where people actually wanted me dead. This," she gestured vaguely at the camp, "this is just training. The colonel who saluted you, you served with him. Among others. Can you tell me anything?" Olivia looked at her. "No." Tara nodded. She understood. Classified. The word carried weight. Meant things had happened that civilians would never know about. Sacrifices made, prices paid. "I'm going to do better," Tara said finally. "Not for you, for me, because I don't want to be someone who does what I did." Olivia poked the fire, adjusted a log. "Good." They sat in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't comfortable but wasn't hostile either, just honest. The next morning they navigated back to base, arrived on time, reported to the instructor. Tara expected Olivia to say something, to report her behavior from the past weeks, to get her removed from the program. But Olivia just gave her report, professional, complete, nothing personal. As they walked away, Tara grabbed Olivia's arm. "Thank you." Olivia looked at the hand on her arm, then at Tara. "For what?" "For not destroying me when you could have." Olivia pulled her arm free gently. "I'm not here to destroy anyone. I'm here to train." She walked away, leaving Tara standing there with the weight of grace she wasn't sure she deserved. The camp rhythm changed after the survival exercise. Subtle shifts, small adjustments in how people moved through space, how they talked, what they noticed. Lance stopped training. Well, he showed up, went through the motions, but the fire was gone. The golden boy shine had tarnished. He'd been measuring himself against everyone else his whole life, winning. Now he was measuring himself against his own behavior, and losing. During a break, he approached Olivia. She was sitting on a bench, alone as always, drinking water. "Mitchell," his voice was different, smaller. "Can we talk?" Olivia looked up. "We're talking." "I mean really talk." She gestured to the bench. He sat, kept distance between them, respectful distance. "I've been an ass," he said. "No, worse than that. I've been a bully. And I'm not going to insult you by making excuses or trying to explain it away." Olivia waited, said nothing. "I pushed you in the mud, mocked you, made jokes at your expense, because it was easy, because it made me feel powerful, because," he stopped, swallowed hard, "because I'm insecure as hell and making you small made me feel big. Why are you telling me this?" Lance looked at his hands. "Because I need you to know that I see what I did, I see who I was, and it makes me sick." "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," he said. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just needed you to hear it." Olivia stood. Lance tensed, expecting anger, expecting her to finally let loose with everything she'd held back. She put a hand on his shoulder. "You're going to carry this for a long time. The guilt, the shame, that's your burden. But Lance," she waited until he looked up, "use it, let it make you better, not bitter, better." She walked away. Lance sat there, her words echoing. the weight of them somehow heavier than condemnation would have been. What does vindication look like when you never asked for it? The live fire exercise came 3 days later. Real bullets, real targets, real stakes. This wasn't about hitting paper. This was about demonstrating control under pressure, accuracy when your heart is pounding, decision-making when the world is loud and chaotic. The range was set up with multiple stations, each designed to test a different aspect of marksmanship: stationary targets, moving targets, long distance, close quarters, stress positions. Cadets took turns. Some did well, some struggled. Lance hit 7 out of 10, respectable. Derek managed 8, better than expected. Tara scored 6, about average. Then Olivia stepped up. She didn't hurry, didn't showboat, just moved through each station with the same calm precision she brought to everything. Stationary targets at 50 meters, 10 rounds, 10 hits, center mass. Moving targets at 75 meters, 10 rounds, 10 hits. Long distance, 300 meters, wind variable, light changing, 5 rounds. 5 hits. The range master stopped the exercise. Mitchell, where did you qualify? Olivia cleared her weapon, made it safe. Various places, sir. Various. The range master almost smiled. Right, those various places train snipers, don't they? Olivia didn't respond. He looked at her scorecard, then at her. You're making my other cadets look bad. Not my intention, sir. No, he agreed. I don't suppose it is. He paused. You're holding back, aren't you? Olivia met his eyes. I'm following the course of fire, sir. He laughed, actually laughed. Dismissed, Mitchell, and thank you for not embarrassing my program completely. The cadets watching had gone quiet. That same heavy quiet that had become familiar. The quiet of assumptions dying, of narratives being rewritten. Marcus, the quiet cadet who'd been in Olivia's combat drill team, approached Derek. You know what I think? What? I think she's not here to train. I think she's here to evaluate, to see how we treat someone who doesn't fit our expectations. Derek considered that. That's a scary thought. Is it, or is it just honest? That night an officer approached Olivia in the barracks. He was young, nervous, clutching a clipboard like it was a life preserver. Ma'am, he caught himself. I mean, Mitchell, there's someone here for you. Olivia looked up from her bunk. Who? He didn't say, just said you'd want to know. She followed him through the camp, past the mess hall, past the training yards, to the main gate where a man stood waiting. He was tall, broad-shouldered, short-cropped hair that was starting to gray at the temples. He wore civilian clothes, jeans, a black jacket, nothing remarkable. But the way he stood, the way he held himself, it marked him as military. The kind of military that doesn't advertise. The guard at the gate had stepped back, given space. Even the colonel had appeared, standing off to the side, hands clasped behind his back. General, the colonel said, nodding to the man. The man didn't respond. He was looking at Olivia, and for the first time since arriving at the camp, Olivia's expression changed, softened, just slightly, just enough. She walked up to him, stopped a few feet away. You didn't have to come, she said. He tilted his head, almost smiled. Yeah, I did. Behind them the cadets were gathering, word spreading fast. Something was happening at the gate, something significant. Tara appeared at the edge of the group, saw Olivia talking to the man, saw the way they stood, the familiarity, the intimacy. Derek elbowed Marcus. Who is that? Marcus shook his head. No idea, but look at the colonel, he's treating that guy like. The colonel cleared his throat, addressed the growing crowd of cadets. This is General Thomas Reed. He paused, let the rank sink in. Olivia's husband. The words hit like a shockwave. Tara dropped her water bottle, the plastic clattering on the gravel. Her mouth opened, closed, no words came. Lance stood frozen, his mind reeling. The woman he'd pushed in the mud, the woman he'd mocked and belittled, was married to a general. Derek felt his stomach drop. All those comments, all that mockery, directed at the wife of someone who could end his military career with a phone call. Kyle disappeared, just turned and walked away, couldn't face it. Reed put a hand on Olivia's shoulder. They walked to her pickup truck, the same beat-up truck she'd arrived in, the one everyone had laughed at. She climbed in the driver's side. He took the passenger seat. The engine roared to life. They drove off, dust kicking up behind them. No one moved until the truck disappeared from view. Then the chaos started. Whispers, exclamations, people pulling out phones to look up General Thomas Reed, finding his service record, his commendations, his position in the military hierarchy. Finding photos of him and Olivia together, at military ceremonies, at formal events, her in a dress that probably cost more than most people's cars, him in dress uniform with more ribbons than should fit on a chest. And suddenly everything made sense, and nothing made sense. Why was the wife of a general at a basic training camp? Why was she pretending to be a regular cadet? Why was she enduring mockery and abuse when she could have stopped it with a single sentence? Tara sat on the ground, her back against a building. She felt nauseous. All those comments, all those judgments, made about someone who'd probably been through more, seen more, done more than Tara would in 3 lifetimes. And Olivia had just taken it, absorbed it, never defended herself, never mentioned her husband, never pulled rank or status or used any of the power she clearly had access to. Why? The answer, when Tara finally understood it, made her feel worse, because Olivia hadn't been testing them. She'd been giving them a choice, to see her as a person or as a stereotype, to treat her with basic human dignity or to reveal their own character flaws. And they'd all failed, spectacularly, publicly, completely. In the officers' quarters, Captain Harrow sat at his desk, staring at Olivia's file, the real one, the one that had just been delivered by courier with a priority seal he couldn't ignore. Page after page of operations, classified missions, commendations, letters of recommendation from people whose names he recognized, people who ran things, important things. He'd called her a supply worker, had dismissed her, had allowed his camp to treat her like a punchline. And she'd never said a word, never corrected him, never pulled this file and shoved it in his face. The phone rang, he answered, "Captain Harrow." "Captain, this is Colonel Bryant." The voice was formal, cold. "We need to discuss your camp's treatment of one of my best operators." Harrow's throat went dry. "Sir, I just watched surveillance footage that's been forwarded to several interested parties. Care to explain why a decorated veteran was subjected to harassment and assault under your command?" "Sir, I wasn't aware of her." "Of her service, of her record. That's not an excuse, Captain. That's an admission that you judged someone based on appearance rather than character, and that you allowed a culture where that judgment led to abuse." Harrow had no response. What could he say? The colonel was right. "Olivia Mitchell didn't file a complaint," Bryant continued. "Do you know why?" "No, sir." "Because she didn't need to. She trusted that the truth would come out, that people would reveal themselves. And they did, including you, Captain. Now we're going to have a conversation about standards, about leadership, about what happens when officers fail to maintain discipline and dignity in their programs." The call lasted 30 minutes. Harrow sat through it, each word a hammer blow. By the end, he understood. His command was under review, his career in question, and he had no one to blame but himself. The next day, the camp assembled for what was supposed to be a routine briefing, but Harrow's expression told them it wasn't routine. He stood in front of them, silent for a long moment. Then, "We failed." The cadets stirred, confused. "We had among us someone who'd served at the highest levels, who'd completed missions most of us will never know about, who'd earned the respect of generals and colonels, and we treated her like a joke. He let that sink in. Mitchell is gone. She won't be coming back. But the videos remain, the evidence of how we conducted ourselves, and there will be consequences. He pulled out a tablet, played footage. The mess hall incident, Derek flicking Olivia's tray, the laughter, Lance bumping her in the mud, Kyle tearing her map, Tara's mocking questions. All of it recorded, documented. Some of you will face disciplinary action. Some of you will be removed from this program, but all of you will carry this lesson. You judged someone without knowing them. You assumed weakness because she didn't perform strength the way you expected. And you were wrong, catastrophically wrong. He dismissed them, the group scattered, silent, processing. That afternoon, official notifications started arriving. Tara received a letter. Her sponsorship with the defense contractor had been terminated. No explanation given, just terminated. She sat on her bunk, staring at the letter, the dream she'd built, the career she'd planned, gone, because of videos she didn't even know existed, because her behavior had been captured and shared and judged by people who didn't care about her excuses. Lance received his notice 2 hours later. Reassignment, effective immediately, a desk job at a base in the middle of nowhere, his golden boy status tarnished beyond repair. Kyle simply disappeared, left the camp with his bags packed, no goodbye, no explanation. Word filtered back later that he'd been discharged, conduct unbecoming. Derek's notice was different, probation, a formal reprimand in his file, a requirement for sensitivity training. It felt like mercy, unearned mercy. He found Harrow later. "Sir, why am I not being discharged?" Harrow looked at him. "Because you apologized. You recognized your behavior and tried to make amends." Mitchell noted that in her report. Derek blinked. She wrote a report. Detailed observations on every cadet, how they conducted themselves, how they treated others. You and a few others were noted as showing potential for growth. The rest, Harrow shrugged. They showed who they were. Derek left, found Tara sitting outside. She looked broken, lost. He sat beside her. "I'm sorry." "For what? You didn't do anything." "I was part of it, part of the culture that made all this possible." Tara laughed, bitter. "We all were, we just didn't know we were being watched." "Should that matter?" Derek asked quietly. "Should we only behave decently when we know someone's watching?" Tara had no answer. How many chances do we get before the truth finds us? The camp felt different without Olivia. Quieter, not peaceful quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from shame, from regret, from the realization that you've been living in a story that wasn't true. Elena, the quiet cadet who'd given Olivia the spare map, found herself thinking about those small interactions. How Olivia had nodded, just once. No words, but acknowledgement, recognition of kindness in a place that had offered her so little. She wondered if that's what separated the people who'd received mercy from those who hadn't. Small acts of decency. Small moments of choosing humanity over cruelty. The training continued. Drills, exercises, the machinery of military preparation grinding forward, but it felt hollow now, like they were going through motions while a bigger lesson loomed overhead, unspoken, inescapable. Marcus approached Elena during a break. "You knew, didn't you?" "Knew what?" "That she was different, that she wasn't what everyone assumed." Elena shook her head. "I didn't know, I just saw someone alone, someone who could probably use a spare map. Just common decency. Should it be more complicated than that?" Marcus had no answer, because it shouldn't be complicated, but somehow, in the culture they'd all been part of, it had been. A week later, a new instructor arrived. A woman, mid-40s, compact, powerful. She moved through the camp like she owned it, because in a sense she did. She was running the program now. Harrow had been reassigned. She introduced herself as Major Simmons. Her first address to the cadets was brief, pointed. "I've seen the footage, I've read the reports. I know what happened here, and I'm not interested in apologies or excuses. I'm interested in watching what you do next, how you conduct yourselves when the cameras aren't obvious, when the consequences aren't immediate. That's who you really are." She paused, let her eyes scan the group. "Some of you will wash out, not because you're not physically capable, but because you lack the character this profession requires. And I will not certify someone for military service who treats their fellow soldiers with the cruelty I witnessed in those videos." The message was clear. They were all on probation, all being evaluated, not just on their physical skills but on their humanity. The next drill was different. Cadets were paired randomly. But this time, the scenarios involved more than combat. They involved moral choices, ambiguous situations where the right answer wasn't obvious. Derek was paired with a cadet who'd also mocked Olivia, a guy named Stevens. Their scenario: a wounded civilian in a combat zone. Evacuating them would slow the team, leave them vulnerable, but leaving them meant almost certain death for the civilian. Stevens wanted to move on. "Mission first, we can't save everyone." Derek hesitated, thinking about Olivia, about how she'd covered their mistakes in the combat drill, how she'd made sure they succeeded even when they didn't deserve it. "We take them," Derek said. "That's not practical." "Maybe not, but it's right." They evacuated the simulated civilian, finished the drill with reduced scores, but Simmons nodded when she saw their choice. Tara faced a different scenario: a teammate accused of stealing supplies. No proof, just suspicion based on their background, their appearance, their reputation. The old Tara would have gone with the accusation, assumed guilt based on circumstantial evidence, made judgments without investigation. The new Tara, the one carrying the weight of shame, insisted on evidence, on due process, on treating the accused with dignity until proven otherwise. They found the real thief, someone else entirely, someone Tara had assumed was above suspicion. The lesson landed like a hammer. Major Simmons pulled Tara aside afterward. "You made the right call." "I almost didn't," Tara admitted. "My first instinct was to believe the accusation." "But you didn't follow that instinct. You questioned it. That's growth, cadet." "It doesn't feel like growth. It feels like barely avoiding another mistake." Simmons smiled. It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cruel. "That's called learning. It's supposed to be uncomfortable." The weeks passed. The camp found a new rhythm, not the confident, cocky energy that had defined it before. Something more careful, more thoughtful, cadets measuring their words, considering their actions, the performance of toughness replaced by actual development of character. Elena became something of a quiet leader, not because she sought the role, but because people noticed how she conducted herself, with consistency, with kindness that wasn't weakness, with strength that didn't require making others small. Derek found himself questioning everything, every assumption he'd ever made, every judgment, every moment where he'd gone along with cruelty because it was easier than standing against it. He wrote a letter to Olivia, care of the address listed in the camp directory. He didn't expect a response, didn't even know if it would reach her. He just needed to write it, needed to articulate what he'd learned, what he'd realized, what he wished he'd understood before. The letter came back 2 weeks later, unopened, returned to sender, no forwarding address. Derek stared at it, felt the weight of it, the finality. Some things you don't get to fix. Some apologies arrive too late. Some consequences you just have to carry. He kept the letter, put it in his footlocker, a reminder of who he'd been, of who he didn't want to be again. Lance's reassignment had put him at a desk, processing paperwork, answering phones, the kind of work that felt designed to humiliate someone who'd built their identity on physical prowess. But as weeks turned to months, something shifted. He started seeing the people who came through, the ones applying for medical discharge, the ones struggling with injuries, with trauma, with the weight of service. He started listening, really listening, and in their stories he saw echoes of what he'd done to Olivia, the casual cruelty, the assumptions, the way he'd made someone feel less than human because it made him feel powerful. He started helping, going beyond his job description, making sure paperwork didn't get lost, that people got the benefits they'd earned, that someone was in their corner. It wasn't redemption, he understood that, but it was something, a small attempt to balance the scales, to use his shame as fuel for something better. Back at the camp, a letter arrived, addressed to Major Simmons. Inside was a short note from Colonel Bryant. Cadet Mitchell's evaluation has been submitted to the relevant parties. Her observations will inform training protocols across multiple facilities. She will not be returning to your program. However, she asked me to pass along one message to the cadets who showed potential for growth. Character isn't fixed. It's built, one choice at a time. She believes some of them are capable of building something good. Simmons read the letter to the assembled cadets, watched their faces. Some looked hopeful, some looked devastated, all of them looked changed. "She's right," Simmons said. "Character is built, and you're all building it right now, with every choice, every interaction, every moment where you decide who you want to be." She dismissed them. They scattered to their next drills, their next tests, their next opportunities to prove they'd learned something real. Alina stayed behind. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you know where she is, Mitchell?" Simmons smiled. "Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. That's not information cadets need. I just wanted to thank her, for the example, for showing us what strength really looks like." "Then show it yourself," Simmons said. "That's the thank you she'd actually want. Become the kind of soldier she'd respect, the kind of person who treats others with dignity even when it's hard." Alina nodded, left, carried those words like a compass. That night Derek sat in the barracks, writing in his journal, something he'd started doing after Olivia left, processing, thinking, trying to understand how he'd gotten it so wrong. Marcus leaned over from his bunk. "You still thinking about it?" "Every day," Derek admitted. "Every single day." "Good," Marcus said. "The day you stop thinking about it is the day you forget the lesson." "You think we get past this, the guilt?" Marcus considered. "I don't think we're supposed to get past it. I think we're supposed to carry it, use it, let it make us better." Derek nodded, went back to his journal, writing, processing, building character, one painful word at a time. "What does it mean to be seen, when you've spent so long being invisible?" 3 months after Olivia left, a ceremony was announced. The camp's top brass would be attending. Graduating cadets would receive their assignments. Recognition would be given for exemplary performance. The cadets prepared, uniforms pressed, boots shined, the ritual of military formality, but underneath the preparation a question hummed. Would she come? Would Olivia Mitchell return for this? Derek didn't think so. Why would she? They'd treated her terribly. She owed them nothing. Tara hoped she wouldn't. The shame was still too fresh, too raw. Seeing Olivia again would mean confronting what she'd done, what she'd been. Alina hoped she would, just to see her, to offer that thank you she'd been carrying. The ceremony began. Officers filed in. Speeches were given. The expected platitudes about service, about sacrifice, about the long gray line of those who'd served before. Major Simmons stepped to the podium. "This class has been unique. They've faced challenges that went beyond physical training. They've had to confront their own assumptions, their own character. Some of them failed that test. They're no longer here, but those who remain have shown something valuable, the capacity to learn, to grow, to become better than they were." She paused, looked at her notes, then set them aside. "I'm supposed to give you statistics now, success rates, assignment details, but I'm going to do something different. I'm going to tell you what I learned from watching you." The cadets shifted, uncomfortable. "You were evaluated this entire time, not just on combat skills, on character. on how you treated someone who didn't fit your expectations, and most of you failed, completely, publicly, painfully. The room was silent. But failure isn't fatal, not if you learn from it. Some of you did. You looked at your behavior and felt the appropriate shame. You made changes, small ones at first, then larger ones. You started seeing people, not as stereotypes, not as threats to your ego, but as fellow human beings deserving of dignity. She looked directly at Derek, then Alina, then Marcus. Those of you who made that journey, you're the ones I'm most proud of, not because you were perfect, but because you were willing to be wrong, to admit it, to change. She stepped back. A door at the side of the auditorium opened. Olivia Mitchell walked in. She wasn't in a faded t-shirt. She wore a dress uniform, ribbons that told stories most of them would never know, rank insignia that made several officers straighten unconsciously. She moved through the room with that same quiet presence, but now they understood what they were seeing. Strength, real strength, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself. She walked to the stage, stood beside Simmons. Derek felt his throat tighten. Tara's eyes filled with tears. Alina sat straighter. Olivia looked at them, all of them, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke. I didn't come here to punish you. I came here to teach you, to show you what happens when you judge someone without knowing them, when you mistake quiet for weak, when you assume that strength has to look a certain way. Her voice carried, not loud but impossible to ignore. Some of you treated me with cruelty, made assumptions, mocked, belittled, assaulted. She let that word hang. And I let you, not because I couldn't stop it, but because I wanted to see who you really were, when no one was watching, when you thought there were no consequences. She paused, let them absorb that. I've operated in places where one mistake costs lives, where judgment has to be instant and accurate, where you can't afford to dismiss someone because they don't look the part. And I've seen good soldiers die because someone made an assumption, didn't take a person seriously, missed a threat because it didn't match their mental image. She looked at Lance. He'd been allowed to attend, sitting in the back, his face pale. I've also seen people change, grow, become better than they were, and that's why I'm here, not to shame you. You've done that to yourselves, but to tell you that character isn't fixed. You get to decide who you are, every day, every interaction, every moment. She stepped forward. I'm going to tell you something that's still classified, but I've been given permission to share it for this purpose. The room leaned in. 6 years ago, I was part of an operation that went wrong. Our team was compromised. We had a choice. Leave behind a local translator who'd helped us, someone the enemy wanted dead, someone who didn't look the part of a hero, didn't have the training, didn't fit our image of who deserved to be saved. Her voice tightened, just slightly. My commanding officer wanted to leave him, said we couldn't risk the team for one civilian. I refused. We went back, under fire, against orders, and that translator, he's alive today, has a family, made it to America, because someone decided his life mattered even though he didn't fit expectations. She let that settle. You had the same choice, not life and death, but the same fundamental question. Do you treat people with dignity? Do you see them, really see them? Or do you let your assumptions make you cruel? She looked at Derek. Some of you failed that test initially but learned from it. You're the ones who have potential, not because you were perfect, but because you were honest enough to admit you were wrong. She looked at Alina. And some of you passed without thinking about it. You showed kindness because that's who you are. That's the foundation everything else is built on. Olivia stepped back. Simmons returned to the podium. Mitchell has agreed to work with this program going forward, not as a cadet, but as an advisor. Her operational experience will inform how we train, how we evaluate, how we build soldiers who have the character our country needs. She dismissed them. The ceremony ended. Cadets filed out. Some approached Olivia, others couldn't bring themselves to do it. Derek waited until most had left, then walked up, stood at attention. "Ma'am, I—" "At ease, Derek." Her voice was softer, not warm but not cold either. He relaxed slightly. "I wrote you a letter, it came back." "I know, I saw it. I wasn't ready to read it. The address I gave was temporary." "I understand. I just needed you to know that I see what I did, what I was, and I'm trying to be better." Olivia studied him. "I know, I've been getting reports you're doing well. The reports feel like I'm being watched." "You are, we all are, by ourselves, by others, by the choices we make." She paused. "That surveillance never ends, Derek, even when there are no cameras, even when you think no one's paying attention. You're building a record every day of who you are." She handed him something. His letter, open now, read. "You're on the right path," she said. "Stay on it." She moved to the next person, then the next, giving each one a moment, a word, recognition of their journey. Elena approached last. "Ma'am, I never got to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us what real strength looks like, for giving us a chance to learn." Olivia smiled, the first real smile anyone had seen from her. "You didn't need me to show you, you already had it. You just needed permission to trust it." She looked at the remaining group. "You want to know something? The work you did after I left, the self-examination, the growth, that was harder than any mission I've run. Combat is easy compared to confronting who you really are. Be proud of that work." She turned to leave. Derek called out, "Will we see you again?" Olivia paused, looked back. "Maybe, if you're lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it." She walked out, the door closing softly behind her. The cadet stood there, processing, understanding slowly crystallizing into something solid, something real. Derek turned to Elena. "We're going to carry this forever, aren't we?" "Probably," she agreed. "But maybe that's the point. Maybe the weight is what makes us stronger, what keeps us honest." Marcus joined them. "I looked her up, really looked her up, after the ceremony. The operations she's been part of, the things she's done, and she let us mock her, let us treat her like garbage because she wanted to teach us." "That's dedication to mission," Elena said. "That's more than mission," Derek corrected. "That's caring about what kind of soldiers we become, what kind of people." They walked out together, into the sunlight, into the rest of their training, carrying the weight of lessons learned the hard way. Tara sat alone on a bench outside, watching them pass. She'd been dropped from the program. Her chance was over, but she'd stayed for the ceremony, needed to see it through. Derek stopped. "You okay?" She shook her head. "No, but I will be eventually." "What will you do?" "I don't know, but I'll do it differently than I did this. I'll remember. I'll try to be better." Derek nodded, sat beside her. "She taught us all something. Some of us get to keep learning here. Some of us have to learn somewhere else. But we all got the same lesson." "Which is?" "Dignity. Everyone deserves it. Everyone. No matter how they look, how they dress, what we assume about them. Everyone." Tara nodded, tears tracking down her face. "I wish I'd learned it sooner." "Yeah," Derek agreed. "Me too." Years later, stories would circulate. Among soldiers, among cadets, among people who'd heard about the training camp where a legend walked among them disguised as the least of them. Some of the stories were accurate, some weren't, but they all carried the same truth at their core. That strength doesn't always announce itself. That the quiet ones might be the most capable. That judgment based on appearance will eventually make you a fool. And that grace, when extended to those who don't deserve it, can change everything. Olivia Mitchell didn't become a legend because she revealed her skills dramatically. She became one because she showed people their own capacity for cruelty, and then showed them their capacity for growth. The cadets who'd served with her, who'd seen her walk through mockery with quiet dignity, they told her story, passed it down, let it grow. Not as a warning, as a reminder. That the person you dismiss today might be the person who saves your life tomorrow. That the assumptions you make reveal more about you than about them. That character is tested most when the cost of failure seems lowest. Derek went on to serve with distinction, but he never forgot the mashed potatoes splattered across a shirt, the laughter he'd earned, the shame he'd carried. He treated every soldier he served with like they might be hiding depths he couldn't see, because they might be. Alina became an instructor herself, taught new cadets about respect, about dignity, about seeing people, really seeing them. She never mentioned Olivia by name, classified, but she told the story, changed the names, kept the truth. Marcus went into special operations, became the kind of soldier who treated local translators and support staff with the same respect as commanding officers, because he'd learned, really learned, what happens when you don't. Tara never returned to military service, but she carried the lesson into civilian life, became the kind of person who questioned her assumptions, who treated service workers and janitors and delivery drivers with dignity, who remembered that everyone has a story you don't know. And Lance spent years at that desk, processing paperwork, helping struggling soldiers navigate bureaucracy. It wasn't glamorous, but it was necessary. And slowly, painfully, he rebuilt some small piece of his character, not redemption, just small acts of service that added up over time. Olivia herself moved through other assignments, other operations, always quiet, always underestimated, and always more than people expected. She carried her own weight, the tattoo on her back that marked her as Ghost Viper, the symbol of operations no one would ever know about, sacrifices made in silence, prices paid without recognition. But she also carried something else, the knowledge that people can change, that cruelty isn't permanent, that the right lesson, delivered the right way, can transform someone completely. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts, it endures, it teaches, it transforms. And in the end, that's more powerful than any weapon, any rank, any reputation. Because dignity doesn't need vindication, it just needs time, and truth, and people willing to learn. Your time's coming, hold your ground, you're enough.